What's going on, Jerome's firing up some Q&A. Thank you, everyone who submitted questions. We'll intermittently put out on the community tab, call out for questions, and you guys are the best. And especially love the OGs, the regulars who contribute questions. Good time. First up is from Mexican Viking. Hola. What do you think is the floor and ceiling for the 2024 Vikings season? Well, I think that the floor it's a young team. And there's a lot of variables going on as the Vikings transition from the old Spielman-Zimmer regime to what Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell have done with their competitive rebuild. And I think the floor is actually pretty high. I know that everyone's hating on the Vikings and basically discounting them as like, oh, they got rid of Kurt, even though they hated on Kirk Cousins for 6 years. Oh, they got rid of Daniil, even though Daniil's turning 30 in October. But they don't see what's happened with the rest of this team. You know, finding your future franchise quarterback, getting a diamond in the rough in slinging Sam Darnold, suturing things up, having depth at the guard spots for the first time in forever, and just getting younger, faster, and better fit schematically on defense. I mean, there's going to be a lot to like. So I think the floor is actually a lot higher than people think. But I don't know, floor, 6-11, 7-10, somewhere in there. Ceiling is the roof. I mean, the Vikings easily could pull a 2023 Texans who, I mean, remember, the Texans only went 10-7. I say only, but they, obviously led by a charismatic talisman in C.J. Stroud and great pieces on defense. Hell, we brought in like half of their defense. But the Vikings, it's weird to say, but the Texans' offensive line outside of Tunsil, so the Vikings have a better offensive line. They have better weapons. And frankly, they have a better play caller with Kevin O'Connell versus Bobby Slowick. No disrespect there. But even though, Stroud versus McCarthy, Stroud versus Sam Darnold, why not us? Why not us? That's what I want to know. Plus with Flores in place, it's going to be good. So I actually think that the ceiling is basically unlimited for the Vikings. And it's kind of nice because the expectations are very low coming in to the season. Next, Sean Thatcher. Besides the return of Diggs and Cousins, is there a game on the upcoming schedule you were looking forward to? All right, so Diggs and Daniil get it on here at U.S. Bank Stadium week 3, September 22nd. Also, Jonathan Grenard, Cashman outside. How about that? Shaq Griffin, blah, blah, blah. I mean, Camus. I mean, there's a lot of Case Keenum. Yeah, there's a lot of back and forth in that game. And, of course, Kirk Cousins returns week 14, December 8th with the Falcons to U.S. Bank Stadium. But, I mean, other than that, like, there isn't really games that I have circled per se. I do think that the Niners week 2 is going to be a hell of a test early on. You have a very good opponent, the reigning, defending, alleged NFC defending champions, coming back into your building where they lost last year, thanks into a large part with Jordan Addison. But just the home debut and seeing what Darnold / McCarthy is going to be, seeing Addison and Jefferson together again. And, I think week 2 is going to be fantastic. Also, I feel like at the Rams is going to be a good test. I mean, the McVay-O'Connell Bowl out there in La La Land on Thursday Night Football will be good. Also, of course, the Bears game, the Winter Warrior uniforms debut. It's going to be good, man. Yeah. So, obviously, there's going to be some Kyrie questions. And like I said, we want to treat this with respect and all of that stuff. And, like, there's no playbook. Like, there's no hard and fast rules of, like, when do you talk about football again, when... So I don't know. But go through questions. Zach Hazley's, OG Jerome. Not a question, but I hope they wear a patch on the shoulder or something and dedicate the season to him. And if and when we win the whole dang thing, someone better say this is for you, Kyrie. And I'm sure the Vikings are a first-class organization. I'm sure that there will be a jersey patch or a helmet decal or memorials throughout the field and the stadium this year, and the fans will. So I ordered a Kyrie Jackson jersey, and I had to get 2XL, so it's gonna be a little bit baggy. But the fact that the team store was just sold out of small through XL just shows how amazing this fan base is. Showing respect and showing homage and stuff. Yeah. Next, Thomas Rohr. Not trying to be insensitive and come off as an a-hole, but are the Vikings entitled to compensation? Such a very weird situation. I know a lot of people are still mourning, but just a curious cat. So this is there's lots of valid technical football questions, right? But, like, are the Vikings entitled to compensation? No, they're not. Or what happens with his contract? What happens with cornerback depth? But what we took Suhan as the Strib to task for is that there's a time and a place, and immediately after the tragedy the same day, that's not it, right? And like I said, there's no hard and fast rules, but I don't know, like you can sense when things are too soon. And of course, you saw so many Vikings fans on social media is like, oh, well, do we get a draft pick the day of? Which, read the room. And they try to go under the guise of, oh, I'm just trying to be realistic and I care about football. No, like there's tact and respect that does need to come into this, even though, like I said, I mean, they are valid questions at a certain point, but the point wasn't immediately after. Now, are the Vikings entitled to compensation? No. And what happens with his contract? The Vikings are a first-class organization, and I'm sure that the Wilfs will do the right thing, and they'll pay out his contract to his family. And I think that's the right thing to do, and the Vikings will have that on their salary cap, which is perfectly fine. And in terms of like cornerback depth, they'll address that when they get there. I mean, training camp's still a ways off and stuff, but yeah, like I said, there's a time and a place for these questions, but immediately after was not the time. So, like a lot of people had issues with that. And then Maxwell Joseph. Realistically, how do the guys on the team move forward after Kyrie's loss? Time heals, I know, but it feels so raw right now, so sad. Yeah, and it's something that varies from person to person, player to player. I mean, they're football players, but they're also humans, and especially you saw on social media like how like emotional like some of the cornerbacks were, like Mekhi Blackman, and it's very clear that they got very close to Kyrie Jackson in a short amount of time, or guys like Dallas Turner, teammates with Kyrie for 2 years at Alabama. Like this hurts, this sucks, and how each person processes grief is going to be different. Some will bounce back right away or compartmentalize and sort of, one of those is what it is, and some will never heal, deep down. Some, people very close to, Kyrie and the Lightons and the Hazels. Yeah. Stuff. But I actually think that having a couple weeks before training camp starts, will help the guys process this. And, I'm sure Kyrie's funeral memorials will happen soon, and it's rough all the way around. Lastly, so all right, we gotta close with a little bit of fun. So Peter Dumday, when and how did you start this channel podcast? What gave you the idea to start making Vikings related content? So started by basically just like I wanted to create what wasn't out there. And now it's like the golden age of podcasting, YouTube. There's tons out there. Love and respect everyone who grinds and puts out content because, I mean, you are putting your neck out there. And like so this initially started as an audio only podcast, but then we started uploading the audio to YouTube, just like a static photo and just the audio. But noticed that it was starting to grow and show, and then we started doing some videos, and then it kind of took off from there. But the first episode was week 14 of the 2013 season. Of course, the famous Blizzard Bowl in Baltimore Blizzard Bowl, the Triple B. Yeah, but this game had everything. So it was 7-6 going into the fourth quarter, and it ended up 29-26 in regulation. And this was towards the tail end of the Leslie Frazier era, and yeah. The Vikings were 3-9-1. They ended up 5-10-1, I believe, that year. Yeah, but I mean, this game Like I said, this game had everything, man. Let's try and get this on screen. I'm a professional. Come on. There you go. So, all right. So Matt Castle, of course, slinging Matt Castle, completing less than 50% of his passes, 17 of 38 for 265 and 2. Toby Gerhart. So I believe Adrian got hurt in this game. 7 carries for 13, but Toby, long of 41, busted it for a touchdown. Love to see that. Cordero taking a bunch of dump off screens and just going nuts. 5 for a $141 and a touchdown. And that was when Cordero was a rookie. And I will still stand by this. Bill 3x5 Musgrave used Cordero the best of any offensive play caller in Cordero's career, which is kind of sad. Jerome Simpson got a touchdown. Let's go. Greg Jennings when he was here for a hot second. John Carlson, the pride of Litchfield, Minnesota. I remember he signed a 5-year, $25 million contract. Yeah, it wasn't great. I have a John Carlson jersey around here somewhere because, obviously. Let's see. Jumping Jarius Wright, Chase Ford. So for a while, I had this running gag of always falling in love with the Vikings backup tight end, and like Chase Ford, that's just the U being the U. Like he was the first one. Jerome Felton is all up in there. Rhett Ellison, let's go. And then also defense. All right, so Greenway, Sendejo leading the way. The Marvis Marcus Sherrills, B-Rob, Jamarcus Sanford, Audie, Jared Allen. I mean, this game had everything. Robert Blanton, Larry Dean, the pride of Valdosta State. I felt like Larry Dean could have been something, man. He could have been like the next Heath Farwell. Everson all up in there. Xavier as a rookie. Sharif Floyd as a rookie as well. Remember, the Vikings had 3 first-round picks. It was Xavier. It was Sharif who fell because Sharif had been mocked as like a top 5 pick, but then he fell because he had short arms. What could have been if he didn't have that botched surgery. And then the Vikings traded up at the back end for Cordero. I believe it was so the Patriots had the 32 pick, and Spielman traded Belichick, I think it was a 2-3-4 for number 32. Kind of worked out. Kevin Williams should be in the Hall of Fame. Mike Maudie. All right, so Maudie and Hodges, the 2 Penn State linebackers. And so this is what the meme is talking about, where men don't need to know each other's names. They can literally just sit around and name off old football players or basketball players. It's 100% true. Because honestly, if like you and I or a couple of us were just hanging out, we could just go through this box score and just read off names and be like, oh, that guy. Men are extremely simple, and I don't mean that in a bad or reductive way. It takes very little for us to be happy. I'm not saying. I'm just saying. So there you go. Athriata, man, Asiata returned a kick. That's how amazing this game was. It was probably like one of those pooch kicks, and Asiata was one of the up men. But yeah, that's where we started the podcast. And basically, after the Vikings sort of blew, it was like, because I remember this, I had like every single word typed out, so it sounded like I was reading a hostage video. Leslie Frazier needs to be fired. And here we are, just a decade later. Seems like a waste of 10 years. Anyways, that's it. Q&A. You guys are the best. You know what to do. Skull production value.